Welcome back to the Saturday Five. I just told Kai to sit up. That's where we are. Please do get in contact with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. Get your questions in for Ask the Five, and please put Ask the Five before the message so that I can pick them out, because the messages are going wild tonight. Thank you for your messages so far. Unsurprisingly, most of your comments are focused on the latest events in Venezuela, which is why we're staying with it. Arnie says, Starmer, I want to talk to Trump. There's a reason why POTUS didn't tell you his plans, Starmer. And I think that's right, and it is embarrassing. But Tom says, which country has the largest oil reserves on this planet? Venezuela. That tells us all we need to know.
Yeah.
I don't think, Renee, you can say that it's embarrassing, when the fact is we know that Trump gave his very innermost circle heads up of this, but not many congressional leaders, let alone other national figures in American politics. I think the UK across the Atlantic can be spared advance notice.
As I asked Niall, and Niall answered, there is no way Reagan would have gone with this without speaking.
Well, can I just, now that you mentioned that, I have a quote here from Margaret Thatcher, right? 30th of October 1983, after the US invasion of Grenada. The late lady said, if you are pronouncing a new law that wherever communism reigns against the will of the people, then the US shall enter, then we're going to have really terrible wars in the world. She made the point that we do not impose our values on other countries, however despotic and awful we may think their leaders to be. Yeah. Right? He didn't mention that, of course.
But that is the one point where I do actually agree with you. I've always argued about Africa. You know, when people say, you know, the Africans ruin their country, my answer has always been to that, that's up to them. Yeah. It's their country.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult circumstances, because we have allowed a world today that is more dangerous than it ever has been. We have intervened before in places, but actually not given them full support. Look at the Arab Spring. That was backed by us, but we didn't give them the strong support needed to install leaders that were actually going to help them become democracies. We just said, here's some weapons, here's some money, go for it. And actually where that's left us is a dangerous world, the world of mass migration, of drug lords running wild, of people like Maduro who think they can sit in power and not be challenged by it, despite the fact they shouldn't be there. And actually, if we're going to intervene, we should be doing it the right way. And at least Trump is saying, we're going to actually run this country now until we can get it into a position, rather than leaving it to the wilderness, which is what's happened across Middle East.
I want to ask, though, do you guys genuinely think that Trump is going to run that country for the good of the Venezuelan people? Or do you think his emphasis is really going to be about extracting as much oil wealth as possible?
The answer is they're not mutually exclusive. Kai, the other distinction with history is that, you know, there have been times where the West and the US has tried to impose democracy on regions that have not had a history with it, in which it would never work in a million years. Afghanistan, Iraq, those sorts of regions, which have always been hellholes and will continue to be hellholes. Whereas this was a country where there was a democratic election last year, where there was an opposition party that was voted in, and yet you had a military dictator in which ignored it. You heard the cries that were cracking through the streets of people saying, this is fantastic because it actually is going with the democratic ideals in which we believe in. That is the fundamental difference to many
So it's democratic for a foreign nation to run your nation onto a leader of their choice comes into power. Doesn't make no sense.
Yeah, well, I imagine for you it probably doesn't. The key distinction is that here there's already been an election, and this is actually going to put the people who are elected.
But what's democratic about another country running your country?
Well, there's a transition period.
Also, clearly, as you can tell from just looking back at you an hour ago, you're flailing in the wind at what exactly the justification for this is. Now you're saying there's one clear justification, but we've had plenty throughout this show, right? Well, is it oil? Is it narco-terrorism? Is it his shoring up his domestic interests? Is it America first? Is it not? So let's be clear.
People who've studied political philosophy will say there's two types of people in the world. There are solidarists and there are realists. Solidarists believe we all hold hands and that everything ends up all right in the end and we shouldn't get involved and actually everyone ends up loving each other and we don't kill each other when there's no governments. I don't believe that's the case. I'm a realist. I believe that the world operates on a realist perspective. Nation states are like people. They put themselves first. They will do things that are in their national interest. America is the global empire. It is national interest is to fight off China. It's in our interest, by by the way, for them to fight off China. It's in our interest, by the way, for them to fight off the Islamists in the Middle East and parts of Africa. These are all things that benefit us.
Yeah.
These are good for British people. They are good for Westerners. They are good for maintaining the status quo as it is today, where we are wealthy and prosperous and your children will be wealthy and prosperous. But it's not very good if you're a drug lord in Venezuela or an Islamist terrorist running Iran. It's not good for those people. Absolutely not.
No, I disagree, because I've said it before, I said it again. How does the ordinary person on the street benefit?
Well,
are ordinary people richer as a result of these wars?
Well, yes,
they're not.
They're not.
Certainly
are.
No, we're not. Everyone's much poorer as a result.
No, we
Okay, so
certainly
let
are
me
by
tell you-
all economic standards. We are better off by taking that oil and using it in our countries. Absolutely. We are better off.
Right.
That is a fact.
No, benefit all companies and shareholders, but not
On your
ordinary
say,
people.
Lucia Bell has answered your question. She says Venezuela is lucky. Once Donald Trump has put the country back on its feet, he will make sure the country gets a suitable new president to run the country. He was open and straight about what he was going to do with Venezuela's oil, and he will ensure that the people profit from it. Wow. So if he does make sure that the people in Venezuela profit from it, will that satisfy you?
No, I tell you why. Because if people vote for another left-leaning government that wants to nationalise, and they can, it's their right, it's their oil, will they go in again until they find the leader of their choice that does what they want?
They didn't vote for that, did they?
But what they got was a drug lord,
Yeah.
a man that was shipping narcotics across the world. And he's going to... I mean, Trump does say that evidence is overwhelming, and the courts will have to present that in an unbiased way. The American court will have to show evidence that this man is involved in narcotics. He isn't a good person, and that money that should have been going to the Venezuelan people, the socialist promise, as ever, turns out to be a lie. It was being kept by the state and given actually to China. China was the ones who were benefiting from it. They were in fact, there were billions of dollars in debt to China, despite being one of the oil wealthiest countries in the world. That doesn't sound to me like as you said before, you said that how are people better off? Well, they're not better off under Maduro.
Yeah, but history doesn't, for me, show that American governments do it for the people, they do it for conglomerates. It is not about the people. As long as there's a government in charge that does what America wants them to do, that's all that matters. It doesn't seem like a...
Well, there's clearly some...
No, it's not it's not about democracy. I think it's about control.
And you'd probably agree that the American government is fairly intertwined with its own corporate interests. So I'm sure they are. That's sort of fine. What I'm really interested in here is this sphere of influence that America is now reasserting in the Western Hemisphere comes directly from a document that was published to much furore last month, right? The National Security Strategy for the US, the new one that was just been published. That strategy, mainly in the UK, we talked about this because it talked about the US needing to assert its dominance in Europe via other sort of campaigns and groupings that were seen to basically say that the US government should, against the European Union, support parties like the AfD and like Reform in the UK. Isn't this interesting that basically what this shows us is that the US will do exactly as it says? And this is a completely new US that we're seeing.
Well, I think it's...
this puts Europe in particular in a weird position, but also Starmer, he has to sort of decide where he sits, doesn't he? And I don't think he wants to side with the US.
Rare but interesting point that you make, because I think that the feeling that I'm getting from your say is that people are respecting a leader that's done what they've said, that's done it swiftly, that hasn't lied about it, and there may be other things, but he's been open and out there and looks like he's batting for the American people. And I think people in the UK are crying out for that kind of leader.
Yeah. You know what? I don't agree necessarily that he's doing it for the right reasons, the justifications are all around, but he is crafting a narrative, and he's giving people a reason to be hopeful, a reason to put their lot in with him and say, all right, I buy that. Whether or not we buy it, fine. That is one thing that Starmer certainly on no topic has ever been able to do.
You've also got to remember, at least when Joe Biden was president, the world did become substantially more dangerous. It was a weaker America. I think the world's the West's enemies saw it as an opportunity. Putin was a good example. China expanded its global empire, even to places like South America.
I mean,
places where it shouldn't have been.
What's really interesting is we've got people dancing in the streets in Venezuela and around the world where they've left to. But this is outside of the White House now. The campaigners are already there outside the White House.
Can I ask you, Alex, to your point earlier, realism versus, what did you call it, solidarism? Do you think that that's the problem that the West has had, is that we've for too long bought our own or drank our own Kool-Aid and thought, actually, in this great coalition of nations together, this realism, this individualism of countries will slowly fade away, and that was never going to be the case? Or do you think there's some hope left for that sort of what Will would call the sort of kumbaya world? Namby-pamby, yeah, that's what you said.
It's the inevitable fall of Rome, isn't it? It's the namby-pambyism. It's the we're too good to fail, and it's this, everyone around us is lovely. Well, then you let the barbarians through the gates, as they did in Rome, and Rome falls, and the empire crumbles, and we're spun into a dark age. Those are the decisions that Western democracies must decide. Are we on our own side, or are we on the empathetic suicide path, where we're going to invite the world's troubles into our home and expect it all to be okay because, oh, wow, all of a sudden they're in Britain, they must agree with us? That's not the case. Yeah. We have got to wake up and realise that most of the world doesn't think like us, most of the world doesn't like us, and actually we are either going to fight for our survival in the world or be dominated by it. China is an exceptionally powerful, growing fast country. It doesn't care for our values, it doesn't care for our people, and it doesn't care for your left wing or right wing.
And it has a strategic plan that it laid out for everyone to see, and it's not a secret, it's doing it, and we're letting them.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it, is that for a long time, well, China and Russia sort of do some things in the darkness, but then also what they do say, we never actually take it or believe it. And this just shows us up in a way.
The problem that Starmer is finding out, and then you'll find that left-wing leaders tend to find out time and time again, is that their approach to the world isn't a realist one. And therefore they get trapped when the real world fights back at them. When Putin invades Ukraine, Obama realised that the appeasement of the Crimea didn't work. Now we have to go to war. Now millions of people are dying. Perhaps we should have said, if you do this, this is what's going to happen, and we stick to our values on it. The problem is the West has got weaker because we have embraced this empathetic suicide that has allowed us to become sort of this liberal democracy that embraces the world, not actually runs the world. And we have a choice to make.